Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar on ADF. Now I would like to introduce Mac, our lead consultant at Jade Global. Mac has more than 14 years of IT consulting experience, 10 years of extensive Oracle application experience, and has been involved in a number of Oracle EBS implementations with modules like CRM, project accounting, OTC, HRMS, and 11i and R12 upgrade projects. And again, I'm Sangeeta Jash, Assistant Manager Marketing Communications here at Jade Global, and also your moderator today for this webinar. I will go ahead and pass it to Mac now, who will review the agenda and continue with the presentation. Thanks, Mac.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Hello, everybody. We are going to start this webinar to basically introduce ADF when we're trying to move around and understand the Fusion architecture. So the high-level points which we're going to cover is the current Fusion application architecture. Then we'll briefly go around the OAF architecture and ADF architecture. Then afterwards we can check out how exactly we can use ADF or OAF or hybrid approach to extend existing business environment. After that, we'll quickly breeze through a couple of best practices which will be required when we are developing any new softwares or any new approaches using ADF. And after that, I will show you a single small presentation on the in-house product which we are developing using ADF. So the first thing always comes in when the word Fusion comes into picture is what exactly is Fusion. We are hearing so many other stuff going around, like what is the Fusion application, what is Fusion architecture, for what is Fusion middleware. So just let's walk briefly around the what exactly is Fusion. So Fusion is a project which started by Oracle a couple of years back in the early 2000s, and what they did is they wanted to bring up all the latest technologies and functionalities which are coming from different acquired companies which are coming together, and that's where they formed this Oracle Fusion project. Was released in 2005 after acquiring a couple of big companies like PeopleSoft, Sable, Jade, Edwards, other things like that. So combining all the best features in terms of functionality and technology, Oracle Fusion was formed. And Oracle Fusion was released in 2005, and it is right now it's covering around 100 different Fusion application modules. The modules are distributed in various industries. There are Fusion Financials, there are Fusion HRMS, there is Fusion Supply Chain Management, CRM, and it's still growing because they are introducing more and more features. So this is more on Oracle Fusion applications. The Oracle Fusion applications is supported by something called as Fusion middleware, which we'll be discussing in more details. But in crux, it's the technology stack component which was combined together after Oracle acquired so many other companies and technologies. And it's a family of the entire middleware is based upon the Fusion architecture, which is nothing but a family of middleware products. So what exactly is Fusion application architecture? There are various components which we can discuss when it comes to Fusion application architecture. But the core methodology or core principle which Oracle wanted to infuse when they are bringing up this new product was a couple of high-level standards, like model-driven, then it should be business process-oriented, and it is more concentrated on business information. It should be service and event-based, like depending upon what kind of information you have, either it can be triggered using events or it can be used as web services. So, the standards defined, so it can be used as a pluggable component in various heterogeneous environments. Also, it is kind of grade ready. What it means is it's very scalable, very secure, and can be managed on very low cost hardware. So, walking on quickly, the entire architecture has various technical components. It has a SOA suite, which defines the workflows, the approvals, the process which will be controlled using BPL, which is Business Procedure Execution Language. and BPM, which is Business Procedure Manager. Now, having said that, it also supports WebDI and XML Gateway if you are implementing the B2B adapter. There is BI Publisher for reporting and branding purposes. There is a component like Application Integration Architecture, also called as AIA, which supports various integration of diverse platforms. Then there is Application Development Framework, ADF, which is used to develop very rich and flexible user interfaces. The Fusion architecture basically uses the latest and greatest database, which is LLMG, and it also supports the MDS, which is the data services for metadata-driven applications. So that is overall core structure of Fusion application. Today, we'll be covering only one component of this entire architecture, which is Oracle Application Development Framework, which is ADF. So the first question that we ask, what exactly is ADF? Before that, let's take a step back. Most of us have worked upon or got introduced to something called as OAF architecture, which is Oracle Application Framework, which we are using, which Oracle provided and Oracle is using, as well as we are using to basically provide all the same service and web service web pages. It is based upon the typical MVC architecture, which is the model view controller architecture, where the model basically provides all the information and it binds to the underlying database and provides all the information. The controller, which controls how the navigation and how the exchange and action should be performed, and view is nothing but the actual web pages which are displayed to the end user. So Oracle extensively wanted to use the same architecture, which was a proven technology and more robust and more interactive. So using the same technology, exploiting the same technology, Oracle built upon something called as ADF architecture. If we see ADF architecture and OAF architecture, both are based upon the same concept of model view controller architecture. Only additional thing which is happening in terms of ADF is the introduction of something called as business layer. So what exactly is the business layer? The business service layer manages the interaction with the data persistence layer. It provides services such as data persistence or object relationship mapping, transaction management, and web logic executions, business logic executions. The business layer in Oracle ADF can be implemented in any of the format, like a simple Java class or an EJB or maybe a web service, and ODF or Oracle ADF business components also. In addition, it can also support features like external data when it is saved in either external files or the CSV files. So having this business layer in between gives you more flexibility in terms of what kind of data we are going to consume or spitting out. The next layer on this one is the model layer. The model layer basically connects the business layer with the controller layer, and Oracle ADF provides model layer in such a way that it consists of two components: the data controls and data binding, and this utilizes metadata files to define the interface. Data controls are like really very abstract, and it provides a nice layer so the developer gets the same development experience where binding any type of business service layer to the views and controllers. The next layer, which is more important here, is controller layer. So what we can understand is controller layer is more of a glue and controlling the navigation between what is happening on the front end versus what is going to happen on the back end. It provides a systematic connector in such a way that it consumes the data coming from the business layer and the model layer, and also tracks all the action performed by the users on the view layer. And it also ensures that the navigation within the pages is controlled in a proper manner in terms of navigating from page 1 to page 3 and coming back using either the back buttons or typically the go back buttons. And the last and the topmost layer is the view layer. Now, view layer is the one which is going to provide you all the user interface related facilities and functionalities. ADF uses various different kind of components in there. You can use ADF Swing or ADF Office. Recently, Oracle already introduced something called as mobile interface, and along with that, the regular components like GSF and the struts are already available. But even after this, all things are available. Oracle suggests us to use JSF instead of any other things because the way they have they have provided all the additional components to make it more and more richer. So, having said about that, about the ADF architecture, let's first go back and understand why exactly and where exactly we can use ADF, and how do we decide whether we want to use ADF or we want to use any other technology like the 4GL languages like Forms and anything else. So there are broadly three categories where we can identify the new customizations. Are we going to build a new business flow within Oracle application e-business suite, or is it going to be a parallel flow, or we are going to build a totally new application which is going to support whatever the requirement or whatever the customization we are going to propose. In all these cases, we have to evaluate and verify what exactly, what criteria we are going to decide, what technology we want to use it. So let's take one by one example to understand all of this. Let's take a situation where we just need to add a couple of extra screens which we don't want to use Oracle provided screen. So in this case, what is the best practice to do is use the OAF framework or Oracle Forms, because it provides exactly the same look and feel of Oracle applications. It's bounded by all the Oracle security concepts, and it is sitting within the image environment. And in this way, there is no additional information provided in terms of security or in terms of look and feel for the new custom screens. The second approach can be when you're building a parallel flow using custom screens. Like typically there are customer forms or there are auto forms. There is sometimes requirement when you have to have a custom approach altogether. So if the company is customer facing, you would want to use a typical rich GUI form instead of having a regular redundant Oracle application forms. So in this case, there is option of either going with OF, which has typical look and feel of Oracle applications in business suite, or there can be something called as hybrid pages. Hybrid pages is a new concept coming up where you embed a couple of ADF components within OF. So it still stays within the business suite environment, but at the same time use some of the functionality of ADF if it is required. The third and very rare approach is to build altogether a separate application together where it has the start and end of its own and it's not correlating anything with the business suite. It will be using some of the data component to provide information or to absorb information, but it is altogether set up as a different application. So here we have a freedom of choosing any of the technology, whether you can choose OAF to build your web pages, or ADF to build really very good interactive web pages, or you can have a hybrid pages approach where most of the components are rendered using OAF and some of the graphical portions are done using ADF. Let's quickly once again recap what we have discussed earlier regarding what to use and when to use. Basically, we can use OAF when we are using most of the components from e-business suite, like for example flex field or security changes, or if we need EBS look and feel, which it's easier to understand because the same environmental feel. Next important is as we all know, OF supports a lot of personalizations, and if you want to incorporate those personalizations going forward on the custom pages, it's easier to use OF. When it comes to ADF, entire Fusion application, no doubt, is built upon the Fusion apps, and it supports multiple data structures like the web services, URL, Java, and as I said, using B2B adapter, even the CSV files and XML gateways too. And if you require really good, very rich user interface, and very interactive, very customizable interface, then definitely the option is ADF. But if you want to have the combination, the best of both the worlds, then it's advisable to go with the hybrid approach where you embed some of the portion more on the graphical side of ADF into OF. It will have the same e-business look, but at the same time it will have very rich user interface, which is more appealing to the end users. Next important question we generally have is, what is the impact of either upgrade or even patching when it comes to do the customizations? It all depends upon how we are doing the customizations. Like if we are using OF customizations, and if we are sitting or we are binding with the boundaries of OF standards, then whatever information we are going to add or customize will not be overwritten by Oracle application patches or upgrades. But if the seeded objects are changed, it may be overwritten during patching or upgrade. Now, OF is once again based upon all the business service information which is provided by e-business service or e-business suite. So whenever the EBS data source is changed or impacted as a result of upgrade, the OF pages will definitely get impacted. The other side is, if the UI is also UI is also dependent upon a couple of lookups which are going to change during the upgrade process, it may impact those lookups too. And the next important thing is, if the plan is to move from say like 11i to Fusion, we need to rewrite all those customizations once again, because in Fusion there is no OF. It is purely ADF based user interface. Now, when you're using ADF, it is impacted only and only in case the core business services are impacted. UI will have no impact at all, because the UI is built altogether as a separate entity which does not bound or which is not linked directly to the core business applications of e-business suite. And it's Fusion ready, because as I said, it is easier to take the components. It's a loosely coupled objects, just like the SO architecture. You can pick up those with very or zero impact. You can redeploy it in the Fusion. So a quick recap can be, when you're moving from 11i to R12, OF has very less impact, whereas ADF has no impact. As I said, it is not incorporated. But when we are moving from R12 to Fusion, OF has very high impact, because you have to change almost every page into ADF. But if you're using ADF, it's easier to just remold it with the Fusion approach instead of building it from scratch. Now, let's quickly just breeze through a couple of best practices which we need for ADF. Once again, the same architecture which we have seen earlier. It supports all different kind of technologies. Best of the technology world right now, it is supporting the MVC architecture. So what exactly are the best practices to implement this overall structure? Best mantra to understand what kind of best practice, what kind of practices we need to find, is to understand the productivity with the choice. So in some ways, choosing a business service provides it's very simple, because we know the requirement, we know the technology. But anything other than the simplest cases, the job, for example, job of the jobs of data retrieval or maybe like caching, it's too complex. And in this case, it is very important to understand how secure, how robust the entire new technology is built upon. That's where the business services comes into picture. Oracle has invested lots and lots of man hours to create this ADF technology, and that's why it's literally a proven in terms of all kind of approaches which should be required. So when we are deciding on the technology, the important question comes in, like what kind of background and experience do we have? Like if we are using from the relational database kind of environment, or the 4G environment where we're using the OF and Oracle Forms, or if you're coming from the PeopleSoft, you're using PeopleSoft tools, it's easier to move on to ADF business components because the similarities of the concept. But if the team is coming upon more traditional object-oriented world, then we may have to find some other option. But right now, ADF has incorporated almost all kind of technologies, whether you're coming from the Java background or you're coming from Oracle background, you are still able to understand and move forward with the ADF technology. The next important question is, how would you prefer to define your services? Like if you want to do as much as possible in declarative, simple metadata definitions. So if it's more in both ways, ADF business component fits built perfectly. Amongst all the other features which ADF has, ADF business component provides rich declarative validation features and uses regular SQL options or statements like defining or clauses, whatever clauses. This way it's easier to understand, and because with the previous experience, it's easy to redeploy all kind of business rules or business logic using the declarative metadata statements. The third more important consideration which has to be put in place for technology choice is, what kind of deployment model do we want? Now, if the choice of business service technology can be easy to make if in terms of ADF, because it provides the largest component, largest layer of abstraction, and it's suitable for all the traditional Oracle developers, it's suitable for all the traditional Java developers, because it's implementing the Java Enterprise Edition bean-like structure, as well as I said, the business layer where it supports all the SQL sequence-like structure. It's easier to understand. Generally speaking, it is important to understand what kind of info you want to provide, which will make the life more easier when it comes to do the deployment choices. Next important thing, which should be considered, at what kind of user interface you want. Luckily for us, ADF has a very strong, very robust components to redeploy various UI choices. Like if you're going to use the web services or you're going to create a desktop edition of your applications, ADF definitely provides that thing. ADF provides Swing for desktop application, and it also provides struts. It supports struts. It supports JSPs, the Java server faces, all together for the web UI. So in both the cases, if you see broadly, ADF has provided technology support to almost everything you would like to consider and coming from different backgrounds. What exactly are the components which are important while building the ADF? So typical ADF business components are the view objects, which are nothing but based on the actual core database entities. These are like various information which can be built on and provided. So like it represents maybe like specific views or shape of the data, how it is going to look, and you can design your own view object depending upon the requirements, like combining multiple entities all together. You can also build a read-only view object so that there is no interaction happening. It's more like on the reporting side, it's easier to build that kind of information. The next important the aspect of business components are the application modules. These are like the containers for all the view objects which you are going to build to support the core business requirements or business approaches. It all, once again, generally speaking, you will really ensure that you only include views and relationships that are required for your transaction. So if it is not required, you can simply remove using, because it's all already contained in one single common container, which is application model. Next important aspect is testing of all the components which you're going to build, and here ADF surpasses other software tools which is available, because ADF Business Component provides a built-in tester to facilitate any kind of testing which were done on the go instead of testing in real life or using the binary variables. It can be simply deployed, it can be simply built, and it can be just tested using the bin-build tester within the Jade developer. The next important aspect is data binding. Data binding can be done in two ways. Most the two naming convention which Oracle uses is superfluous and reference binding. So what exactly is superfluous binding? Each time you build a view object or an entity object, ADF creates a superfluous binding with each and every column of that view which we are using. So it is inbuilt operation happening. So in several places where you are going to remove a couple of information, couple of fields from the web page, the superfluous binding still remains. So it is very important to understand that when you're consuming or building a component using one entity and some of information is no more required, it is important to remove all those bindings manually, explicitly, so it is not laying around, which may cause some kind of impact going in future. The response binding is straightforward. Definitely you can use the JSF EL, which is expression language, to create any kind of response binding on the page. It is really important to understand that EL notation you can access binding on other pages, but there is no guarantee that those bindings have been instantiated. So when you are using this kind of binding, you need to ensure it is created and properly cleaned up, initiated after using it in the components. On the UI side, it's really straightforward. You can use JAWS or Face for these two things, for all the different UI requirements. Now, JAWS or Faces provides you two more important things, something called as backing beans and something called as managing beans. So, Jade developer will create a backing bean automatically for every component you're creating, and in doing this, it controls the atom from the web page. When you try to implement these backing beans, you always need to understand that you have a clear naming convention for your items and backing bean accessors. You also need to understand that you have to get into the habit of keeping backing bean as clean as possible by removing all the unnecessary accessors, because the moment you create a component, immediately next thing Oracle Jade developer does is create your backing beans. So if you are not cleaning those references or unnecessary accessors, it will be it will be difficult to understand what exactly and why exactly we are using those backing beans accessors going forward. Now, the next important thing is manage beans, which is once again coming from EJB. It is a place when you want to refer to a state of information instead of specific field. So you can use manage beans to access the state rather than the session or the request directly. And if you directly use, you may lose the layer of abstraction by having this implementation details in JSF. Couple of more information on how exactly this ADF application should be built. So application templates is the topmost container for any ADF component, any ADF application you want to build. It encapsulates and provides you most of the information which is required to build the ADF application. And it also assists you in organizing your projects and and when you combine templates with technology scoping, you can streamline the entire design and deploy using your single application template. This is nothing but more of like either predefined components, application technologies, or maybe like the custom ones which you may be using. The next level is the projects. Basically, while partitioning your entire information, it's helpful to identify the starting point. So in this way, if you put the project in place, it is logical container set of all those information required for one specific activity. This way it is easier to control and deploy. Java package, or packages as we say, is next level of partitioning, or maybe like more refined partitioning. Sometimes it can be difficult to exactly map out the package structure in advance, like when you're starting development. But it is easier the more we go into the development process. It's easier to define those packages and moving the components within those packages for the related entities. Coding practices, as we say, Jade developer itself provides a number of aids, a number of hints to be consistent on coding practices. You can define your own code styles using the code editor, or you can do a typical auto formatting, which is available within the IDE. Next important thing is business services. Business services is kind of the heart of the application, and some of the best practices are to ensure that when you're deploying your business service, regardless of technology you're using, try to think about the service interface. You only expose those data or those entities which you want to manipulate during your actual process deployment, not referencing all the entities which are available. Your service interface should be a kind of a gateway for your application, which is kind of a controlling and the scope on transaction your application. So that way, if you predefine your business services, it's easier to implement next level of components to build this business service. User interface and controller. Whether you combine all the development in one single team, or they are building in separate, these components are building in separate teams, the business services and user interfaces are good in a way that it is kept with the clean separation of two implementations. This will give us an advantage of modularization, a clear separation, and easier to reuse this component, because business service is in itself is a component, and user interface and controller are different interfaces, different components. Next, a good thing is strings, which is like, for example, if we are building applications, it's a typical habit sometimes to hard code your errors and exceptions. So in those cases, strings comes into picture where you dynamically create your exceptions, error handling, and sort of hard coding those messages. It is easier to save it in some kind of lookup and then just reference them when you are providing the exception reports. And in this, what will happen that the exceptions can be controlled and can be reviewed, remodulated whenever it is required as per the requirement of the current situation. Here, I would like to once again hand it over to Sangeeta.
Hi, we'll take another poll here. I request you to kindly submit your answers for this poll. Our poll question is, what kind of UI customization approach do you prefer? We'll wait for a minute or so for your answer. Thank you for your answers. We'll close the poll now.
Perfect. Thank you, Sangeeta. Looks like we are still looking, people are looking for the mobile application too nowadays. Thank you for that. So, and say that let's move to the core of what exactly and why exactly we should use ADF. First and foremost thing, ADF couples very loosely with different technologies. ADF has a binding layer and it exposes the business services uniformly through data controls to the front-end developers. And that's why having different information bounded together using loose coupling gives advantages of replacing one component with another without impacting the overall functionality of other components binded with the same process. The next really good thing is there is no definitive backend dependency. What exactly it means is you are not definitely dependent on one specific backend. You can use EJB, JPA, or maybe ADF business components, web services, CSV files, XML, and various worksheets just to support the data which is required for the functioning of that application. So the next important thing which is really innovative feature of ADF is ADF is easy to expose your software as a service which is like SaaS with the ADF, whether it's ADF task flow or whether it's just ADF small UI screens, you can expose them as software as a services with no issue and very little information, little efforts. The important thing is rendering. Like within ADF pages, we want to give a different look and feel and have interactive features, and this all can be done without worrying about what exactly and how exactly it has to be rendered. We can directly incorporate a HTML page or let's say a Flash or a PNG file, and instead of worrying about how it's going to work, we let things to happen within ADF, and we just go around when to use and how to use those rendering services. Personalizations. Oracle provides personalizations on web, and they wanted to retain the same functionality in ADF too. So with ADF, it is easy to let the application user customize the UI as per their needs. They can change the look and feel, that they can move a couple of fields within the page, within the boundaries of the page. And the good thing is those runtime customizations are persisted across different sessions using metadata. So it stays back for that specific user once the customization is done and they wanted to return it as the way they like. The last and important thing is declarative binding security. It's a constraint which we can implement using application roles. So depending upon infrastructure, just map the enterprise roles within users or reps to the application role. And if we are using and we are deploying the entire product in Oracle Web Server, it is really easy to integrate with almost all kind of authentication provided, just like OID, Active Directory, or LDAP. Here's a small demo of what we have done in-house. Mostly what I have, most all the Oracle application users, they come across integrating various applications to inflow the data and to maintain the Oracle application services properly. So let's take an example of interfacing between on Oracle Order Management, where we have the banks and the logistic partners and the regular vendors, and they are providing information in different files. Somebody provides a text file, somebody provides a CSV file, somebody provides information in XML files. All of them are pouring into our custom interface table. So typical approach is to validate, then process, and then notify the error message. So in this, what happens is, in typical real-life case, the information is not accurate all the time. And whenever there is information coming up incorrectly, it is IT department's headache to correct that information and provide a substantial solution on how to move that data correctly into e-business. And that's where the new tool, which is Jade proprietary tool called as Exception Management Solution, comes into picture. It is developed in ADF Essentials. ADF Essentials is a smaller component which is free of cost to be used for all of us, all of the e-business and ADF interested people. It basically it is to be configured using information which is required for that interface. You choose specific interface, you choose specific the keys which you want to make it as a primary key, and you have definite columns. And once it is configured properly, you can basically choose any of the seeded interface or the customer interface and develop this screen in such a way that once this entire interface is configured, on the go you can search and edit all or any records you want to through the corrective action on all those data records which may be erroneous or coming in as an exception.
Jade Global is an Oracle Platinum partner and is a leading information technology services and solutions provider. We deliver the right combination of business knowledge, product and technical expertise, project management, and flexible delivery models to every engagement to ensure every client's long-term growth and success in business. For more information, please visit www.jadeglobal.com. Jade Global is headquartered at San Jose, California, with offices in Texas, New Jersey, and India. You can call us on the numbers on your screen or email us at marketing@jadeglobal.com if you have any questions or if you want to know about our solutions and services. We'll help you out with any query you have. Thank you very much for attending this webinar and hope to talk to you soon.